So you can decide when you want to start, I think.
Yes, for me, it's now and 15. So perhaps
yes,
we're going to just to wait 5 more minutes, and after perhaps I can begin the meeting. Okay for you?
It's okay.
Okay.
So I will ask you to close your mic when the speaker will begin, and also you can write all your questions in the chat. So do not hesitate to write them.
Okay. And if there are attendees, they can open their micro, or it's better to write the question in the chat?
It's better to write in the chat or to ask to speak, like to raise hands or things like that.
Yes, in reactions. Okay. Okay, perhaps we could start the conference. It's okay for you? Okay, so good morning, everybody. I warmly welcome you to this session 70 on innovation, and as well as we will see specifically on green innovation. Thank you to the organizers for this great international conference, and I'm glad to see you in this session, even it's still a virtual session, so hi. As the lectures are very diverse and cover different topics, I suggest that we ask questions at the end of each lecture. And to ask questions, you have two options. You can raise your hand in the end, in the question with the emotic reactions, or perhaps you could write your question in the chat. So first I will leave the floor to Mahendra. It's okay. Will speak to us about the economic organization of energy sectors, more specifically how the evolution of digital technology as in artificial intelligence or blockchain or digital twin has impacted the organization of startups as a platform. So it's okay. So Mahendra, please, you can speak out.
Thank you, Isabelle, for introduction. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Depends where you are. It's quite a big conference, and I hope it covers a lot of different geographical locations. And my name is Mahendra Singh. I did my PhD from Grenoble in France. And now I'm working as a senior researcher at Fraunhofer Institute for System Innovation and Research, ISI. Fraunhofer is a German-supported applied research company, and they cover a variety of research topics, includes, I think, most of the topics in applied science. And today I'm going to present Emergence, my paper entitled Emergence of Digital and Access Service Platform in German Energy Sector. Rather than presenting paper, but I will also discuss the entire project that we did. So this is the agenda for today's presentation. So I'm going to discuss research background, research question, methodology and data, and followed by finding, conclusion, and references. At the end, of course, we have some chance to ask question and answer and some clarification if there are. So in 2019, we started a project that's called Innovation System Excellence Center, ISTEC, and it's funded by the Fraunhofer Society itself. And the fund was like, I think it's a 5 million euros. And there were different sub-projects. And I was leading the sub-project Data-Driven Assessment of Energy Startups in Germany. And the final goal of this project to analyze the various activities of the startup or emerging a startup in German energy sector. For instance, what kind of technologies they are developing, who are the stakeholders behind these startups, what kind of business model they are practicing, whether they have the patents or not, how they distributed geographically, and also what kind of fundings they have. For instance, Germany is also accessing a lot of EU funding apart from this BMWI, the government funding. Yeah, so considering all these points, we started our project to just get the idea about the energy startups in Germany. And in order to formulate our research question, this is how we formulated our research question: how emerging technologies are intervening in the energy sector and facilitating ongoing transition. In Germany, energy transition is quite a big topic. There's a lot of institute and also the researcher working on that, but it's really hard to quantify the energy transition. So that's why we just pick one part, like the startup, energy startup. And in the terms of technology, our underlying analysis is focused on basically the digital technologies like AI, blockchain, cloud, or at least emerging technologies, not the quite old one generation, nuclear, not these energy technologies, but I would say the IT technologies, also the green technologies. And second point, we were looking at change in value proposition, what kind of value proposition they are offering, who are the targeted customer. For instance, now the target customers are not just single customer or 2-3 customer. Now they are targeting kind of ecosystem, like targeting entire set of customer. And what are the actors, who are the actors funding or supporting these technologies and business model, as I explained in the terms of funding, stakeholders, and all that. And in order to build that project, of course, we need a good amount of data. But when we started project, we looked at a different set of data. Unfortunately, there was no unique data set that satisfy our exact need. So we started in a different way. We just look at the different funding program, startup accelerators program, and also the public startup databases, reports, and also initially we had some list of startup companies that belongs to the energy sector. Then we used three data set. One is commercial business register in Germany. It's like when someone opens a business, you have to register this company or a startup to that particular office, commercial business register. And also the company databases, mainly two company databases we use, Marcus and Amadeus. They are kind of part of this credit reform company database, and also the patent database, that patent state database is European database, and that includes the patents coming from all the European countries. And combination of these three database gives us information about their physical address, also the date of incorporation or registration date, the stakeholder details, who are behind those companies, and then also number of employees. I mean, number of employees is not that good quality of data, but still they have some information about that. And also from the PATSTAT, we can retrieve the information of the startup, those have the patents. And as we know, the energy sector is quite dynamic, and it's not just get all the information relying on these static data set. That's why we combine the unstructured set of data that coming from the LinkedIn company web pages, and also we did web scraping of almost 240 companies. And then we combine the structured and unstructured data for the final analysis. And at the end, we came up with the geolocation of these companies, also the stakeholder analysis and the patent analysis. And from the unstructured data set, we got the keyword analysis that's coming from web scraping, and also the technology focus. We just scrap the data like about us, our technology, our services, and so on, to get the insight about what kind of technology or product they are building. And also the funding details. It's really hard to find the funding details about this startup, but in many cases, they mention their funding details on their web page. So it's easy to get if we perform some web scraping. Like, it's kind of requirement from EU Commission or also the BMWI, they must have to put the funding information on their web pages. And at the end, we did some analysis for business model changes or business model innovation. And apart from that, we also use two external data sources. One is called the Startup Detector. It's a Berlin-based startup company. They collect startup data from the different startup. And also the InnoLoft startup and innovation platform. It's kind of platform, private platform, but they collect all companies belong to energy sector, but now not the energy sector, but they are collecting also like healthcare sector and all these startups. And as I mentioned, the commercial business register it's not that user friendly to use this data set, because it's a lot of text and it's required a lot of effort to get something out of that. So we use the North Data. North Data is also a German company, and they collect all these startups that formed in Germany, and they provide the API and also some tool to analyze the data set. And in our collection, we collected only startup that emerged in between 2014 to 2020 April. So we considered a period, decent period, like 6 years. After 6 years, some startup, they become mature and there are no more startup. And this is the one example of the keyword extraction. So in the web scraping part, we focus on three kinds of keyword extraction. One is technology keyword, as I explained, what kind of product or services they are building, and also the business keyword. Sometimes business keyword is not clear, but in many cases it's provided by the data collection services, because they personally check the business pages of each company, and they figured out whether the company is working on the B2B, B2C digital platform or X as a service, and also the funding keywords. This is one example in figure. You can see how the keywords look like in case of platform-based business model. For instance, flexibility as a service, so somehow it's includes virtual power plant, device-based energy platform, demand response, and so on. And the keyword sources, of course, one of them is web scraping. And apart from that, we also use the S3 platform, EU Commission, where you can find all keywords that are coming from the funding document. And the good part of this platform, you can also filter the regional contribution. Even you can go to the more deeper, like the Bundesländer, like the state level. And also the third point is, of course, we collected the keywords from the data collection services. And now I'm going to discuss some of our findings. So in our data collection, we came up with the 240 innovative startup. At some point, they are innovative. I mean, it's really hard to define what the innovation exactly, but we only collected the startup who are implementing some kind of new services or some kind of new technology or product. Yeah. So we found 240 startups in the different sectors like renewable energy, energy management, and energy storage. So most of the startups reported in energy, renewable energy. So renewable energy is still very attractive sector in Germany for entrepreneurs, followed by energy management and energy storage. And as I said, it's only included 2014 to 2020 April. And apart from that, it's also filtered the companies like the consulting companies, NGOs, or merger and acquisition companies. So we focus only on pure startup company, energy startup company, not if a startup is owned by the big company, so they are not kind of a startup or supported by those big companies. And the startup who not belong to these principal categories, they belong to the other. And in the terms of technology focus, we developed 3 clusters. So if in figure, you can see the cluster A that somehow includes the technologies. It belongs to the renewable part like solar, wind, waste to energy, and battery storage. So most of the startups found in this category, for instance, solar PV, they include 20% of the startup. And in Germany, waste to energy is also getting a lot of attraction. And as a result, 2.1% startup developing this kind of waste to energy technology. The only missing is hydro energy. Unfortunately, we didn't find any startup that building some kind of innovation or services based on hydro energy. And in cluster B, that includes mostly the information technology, or you can say the digital technologies. And these technologies, the technologies like the IoT, AI, and the big data or data, they are kind of leading this digital transformation of energy sector. But the interesting part is that there's also very new emerging technologies like digital twin and also the cloud, or let's say blockchain. They're also part of this analysis. Like the startups are also using these technology, but still they are not mature enough to attract more and more entrepreneurs. So probably in future, we will see more companies building digital twin or blockchain-based services. And the cluster third is include the technologies that are more recent, or we can say somehow in between. For instance, sector coupling or fuel cell is really hot topic in Germany, but it's still in terms of commercialization or developing a startup is quite far from the reality. Like only, 2 or 3 companies reported they are implementing sector coupling technologies, also the hydrogen. So these technologies are still in policy making phase, and there's a lot of debate and discussion about, but the startup are also trying to catch the advantage of these technologies. And in the terms of software and hardware development, so we found like 19.6% companies implementing software, and 13.3 are they building hardware, and few of them they are building both like hardware and software. A significant number of companies belongs to the other sector because either they are relying on service, building some service platform, digital platform, or offering some service, but in reality they are not developing a really innovative product, hardware or software like that. So basically some kind of providing different services to final consumer. And in the terms of business model focus, so one thing I just quoted from the Accenture report, like in 5 years, more than half of customers will select services based on artificial intelligence used by supplier instead based on supplier trading brands. And the very famous example for this, we can find like Amazon movies or like the Netflix movies or the Amazon product recommendation or something like that. So similar will happen in energy sector as well. We will get some kind of feedback or some kind of choice from that developed by the algorithms to choose our energy provider. So in terms of this energy startup or the companies, they are building some kind of digital platform to just target an ecosystem, not just target one or two customers, but building an ecosystem so that they can sense also how this entire consumer base is moving. For instance, the more and more, if there's a larger number of customers started using some other provider, they can change their service or they can improve their quality or something like that. So yeah, and that's very interesting, because now if we see the integration of value chain in energy sector, so we can see most of the startup are targeting at the top layer, like the energy supplying or energy trading and these kind of services. No one is going to compete on the generation, distribution, or DSO or TSO side, because according to the legislation, consumer or the main phase, consumers should be main phase of this entire energy market. So most of the startup, they're trying to build services that somehow include a bigger and bigger consumer base. So we found in Germany also a lot of the startup building this digital platform, and they're also offering the aggregator service like the service platform as well. And the reason behind this implementation of such kind of platform, because they offer very fast scalability and also return in investment. For instance, if one investor is going to invest, let's say in Germany, but this business model or this service can be extended in France or other EU countries. So they believe like if it's success, the business will move further. And in terms of business model focus, we found that almost 8% of companies, they already implemented completely platform-based business model, and 13.6% is still experimenting platform business models with B2B and B2C. And a significant number of companies is still relying on B2B and B2C, but in future, probably we will see this green and blue curves probably will be rising in future, hopefully. And in some cases, the few startups are really new and there is no clear idea about what kind of business model they are practicing, what kind of business model innovation they have. So they are just in product development phase or experimentation phase. So it's hard to identify what kind of business model they are using. And if you look at the platform and access business models, then we found like 10 types of access services, and few companies, of course, building digital platform. But most of the common access services are like the software as a service, peer-to-peer, that's coming from the charging, electricity trading, and also the charging as services. So I would say most of the use cases for this access platform are available in energy management, and also the electric mobility and like the flexibility market. So we found like 57 companies are implementing either a digital platform or access as a service platform. Then we further looked into the companies who are building such access business model or digital platform. So most of the companies are using data or big data technologies to build their services on the top of that, because data is something really important for them so that they can improve their services. And as I said, they can also sense the ecosystem. And there are few new as a service companies are coming, like the flexibility as a service and energy as a service. So in future, we will see probably energy as a service and flexibility as a service will cover significantly cover the market of energy sector. And it's also supported by the legislation. The companies must have to include all flexibility option that can be provided to the user. Sorry. And in order to identify the network effect in these startup companies, I mean, this topic, we are still exploring how we can build some kind of indicator or some kind of measuring parameter that can measure what is the role of network externalities in the digital platform or access platform, particularly in energy sector. So there is a very famous law given by the Metcalfe law, and usually it's applied in telecom sector that says strength of the network is proportional to the square of connected user. But applying in energy sector is a little bit difficult because it's hard to find the exact number of consumers or subscribers who are using such kind of services or platform. So we assume like, okay, if there is a financial growth in these startups, so somehow they're also building their consumer base. So more and more financial growth is somehow implies to the consumer growth as well. So in some cases, we use literature reviews. For instance, we can find easily the literature about the charging as a service, and there's a lot of literature supported that this market has very high network externalities, and same for the energy as a service and also the flexibility as a service. But there are some models are really new. It's like comfort as a service and also battery as a service, like our microgrid as a service. In that case, we don't have any literature that can say whether these models have high network effect or medium or low network effect. In that case, we use our assumption to compare their financial, previous year financial growth. And we found that like comfort as a service has particularly low network effect, and also the battery as a service has somehow medium network effect. And here I listed all the central value proposition and all the network candidates. It means who belongs to the that particular network. And also the central value proposition is like what kind of value or services they are offering. I mean, you can find in paper in greater detail, but here it's difficult to cover all these business models in presentation. And as I said, few models like solar as a service, battery as a service have the medium network externality, and yeah, comfort and microgrid have the low network externalities. And in the terms of geographical distribution, the companies implementing access or digital platform, most of them, they belongs to the Berlin region, followed by this Baden-Württemberg, where I live, and then it's Northwest Rhine region. Yeah, I mean, Germany is quite famous for startup ecosystem, and that's the only region, but still we are looking further what's other impacts companies to build such business model in these particular regions. Maybe a strong network connection, a larger number of internet user or something like that. That could be planned for future history. And just a few more findings. We also looked the patent data behind the startup, stakeholder information, and funding detail. In the terms of patent, we found 22.1% companies that own at least one patent, and 79.9% have no patent detail at all. And most of the patent is coming from energy storage sector. So there's a lot of research and investment in this battery technology or energy storage research. And in database, we found stakeholder information like 92.2% companies reported their presence of a stakeholder in the databases. And we found most of the stakeholder invested in renewable energy. And also there's a significant investment is coming in energy storage sector because of growing investment and also the research or R&D activities. In all collected startup, 72.9 reported the funding detail, at least one public funding. Let's say EU funding by German Energy Ministry, or this Energy funding. So they are quite famous one. And few of them, they are still in laboratory phase. Like, I don't know, maybe in future they will receive some funding, but still they don't have any funding information on their web page. At least they don't have some public information. This is the one example of blockchain technology. The startups companies developing or implementing blockchain technology. So first one, you can see Jiahui. It has somehow a collaboration or like partners from Clémis University of Technology, and also ENGIE, is a French utility. And then there's some Fraunhofer institution, Fraunhofer FIT, IPT, and all. And there are some other examples how this venture capital and the startup companies are related together, whether they have the private or public fundings. I mean,
sorry, Mahendra, if you could present your conclusion. Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, that's a conclusion slide. Yeah. So we found in our analysis, monitoring startup energy activities, it could be an important indicator. It could be added like CO2 emission, energy consumption, all the clean energy production. And as we noticed, most of the companies, they're trying to build access or digital platform, and somehow these platforms are facilitating immediate scalability and also the replicability of business model, as I explained before. And the future of this work, we are trying to combine the innovation activities from research lab, universities, and different established companies, how they are correlated and what kind of common activities they are doing. So that's why we are looking some information or some analysis for this innovation clusters in Germany and also at the EU level. And just last slide, here are the few references. Recently, we published a journal paper. It's just last week online. So if you find interesting, you can find further details about the stakeholder funding and all in the last one that's published in Sustainable Energy Technologies and Assessment. And other two are also very interesting references in the terms of presentation and paper. And thank you very much. If you have further questions or comments, you are very welcome.
Thank you, Mahendra. Please, if you want to ask some questions, you have the chat, or perhaps you could raise the hand. So, is there any question? So perhaps I can begin with one question. You talked about the Metcalfe law. I would like to know if there is some limits about this law, and what kind of limits you could imagine with the question of digital technology.
Yeah, that's a very valid question. Actually, yeah, this law is coming from, Metcalfe law is coming from telecommunications sector. So if we have the number of subscribers that we can easily get from the telecom companies, but in the context of energy companies, I mean, there are some limit. We cannot easily get those subscribers or the users who are using those platform or digital technologies. So yeah, I mean, there are limits, but still we are investigating with this law actually. So yeah. From my side, I mean, there are some limits, but still we are in process to investigate such kind of difficulties or limits. And in some citation or some research work, they also criticize this law. They somehow they proved it wrong. But I would say from my answer is like, in terms of digital technology, the only limitation is to getting the number of users or actual users who are using those technologies.
Okay. Some other question? Perhaps I could ask another question, sorry. Yeah, it was a very interesting presentation. You talked about finally, it's the problem of network externality that could create more value. I would like to know your advice about the question of, how could I say it? A scale, scale network, scale effect, because the former industrial way was based to create value about these scale effects. And what is about the digital technology? This advantage is disappearing or no?
Not disappearing, actually. I mean, if you consider the network effect in other sector, for instance, the bank, real estate, the retail sector, so strong network effect, the companies, they are making more and more revenue. So I mean, somehow these energy companies, they're trying to replicate those network effect in the energy sector as well. So when they push or start using more and more distant technology, probably it will enhance their networks. So if, I mean, just for example, if we compare Europe and America, before all these, you know, the network market and externalities, they belongs to the American companies. But now, if you look in Europe, there are so many companies, big or small companies, they are also trying to implement their consumer base based on this network effect. So in future, I hope it will grow more and more.
Okay. Please, are there any questions from the floor? No, I don't see any hand raised. So we are going, I'm going to thank Mahendra for his presentation. And now we are going to talk about another subject. What could be, I think, what could be the environmental impact of foreign direct investment for the host country? And we will follow the Chinese investment project along the Silk Road. So Xinxin, you have the floor. And I didn't remind the rules. It's 20 minutes of presentations, please.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, all right, I will get started. Hello, everyone. It's my great honor today to present our working paper. And I'm Xinxin Ye, from a graduate student from Huazhong University of Science and Technology. Today, I will present a paper co-authored with my supervisor, Professor Wang, titled China's Belt and Road Initiative and Host Countries' Green Innovation. So why do we come up with this issue? As we all know, in September 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping put forward the Belt and Road Initiative. After the initiative was put forward, many scholars have expressed concerns about the environment of the BRI. China has noticed the voices of the international community and responded positively. The Green BRI was launched in 2017 to minimize the potential environmental risks of investment projects. It can be seen that there is no consensus on the environmental impact of the BRI in academia. We want to assess the impact of BRI from the perspective of green innovation, which has more profound meaning for green development in countries along the route. So we asked the three questions. The first one is the environmental impact of the BRI on the countries along the route green? Second, does the BRI actually promote green innovation in host country? Third, if so, what is its possible internal mechanism? Is there heterogeneity? In order to have a brief understanding of these issues, we will now review the relevant literature. We divide the collected literature into two parts. One is the literature on the green environmental effects of FDI on the host country. Among them, we focus more on the part B. There are 5 channels: the technology gap, the absorption capacity, the environmental regulation, the energy structure, and the patent cooperation. The second one is the literature on the green environmental effects of the BRI on the host country. In general, the existing literature rarely studies the environmental effects of the BRI from the data dimension of green patents. Moreover, it is narrow to assess the environmental impact of the BRI only from the perspective of project's energy consumption. Therefore, based on the premise of the development level of the host country, this article uses green pattern data to conduct the empirical testing in order to provide new empirical evidence for the environmental effect assessment for the BRI. Then I will show you the data and methods. Our data covers 96 countries in the world, covering the period from 2003 to 2016. The dependent variable is green patent, and it comes from the OECD Environmental Patent Database. Our core independent variable is the term DID, which is the intersection term of BRI and the time. BRI equals to 1 means this country sits along the Belt and Road. For the time point of BRI policy, it's worth to note that when you use the earliest year that a country cooperates with China instead of the official BRI year in 2013. We also control some factors that may affect the green innovation of the host country. You can go through it very quickly. Then we design the main regression model. This is a simple DID model. Let's first look at the meaning of each variables. The subscripts I and T represent the country and year respectively. Green paths represents the green patents as a proxy variable of green innovation, where S equals to 1, 2, 3, 4 represents patent family. The size of an international patent family has been found to be correlated with the value of the invention. Family size 1 will yield figure based on all available data worldwide, including many low-value inventions. Family size 2 will count only the higher value inventions that have sought patent protection in at least 2 jurisdictions. That's to say, the larger the number, the higher the patent value. DID is a difference in differences estimator designed in this paper, and X is a series of control variables described in the previous section. Mu I, gamma T, epsilon IT, all of them are our idioms. We all know that. The coefficient beta 1 of the interaction term in the formula is the one we are most concerned about. Then we look at the left side of the equation. Dependent variable green patents have discrete characteristics and need to use a counting model. Commonly used counting models are Poisson model and the negative binomial model. Poisson model requires the mean and variance of variables to be close. And what we can see from this figure that there is a big difference between the mean and the variance of the dependent variable. The Poisson model is no longer applicable, so we use a negative binomial model for regression. In order to further explore the heterogeneous effect of the BRI on the host country's green innovation, we replace the dependent variable in Formula 1 with more subdivided green patterns. And just to give you a quick description of the segmentation of green patterns, as you can see from this picture, all patterns are divided into green patterns and non-green patterns. Green patterns can be divided into CCM, MAN, and WAT. CCM represents patterns in the field of climate change mitigation. MAN represents patterns in the field of environmental management, and WAT represents patents in the field of water-related adaptation technologies. Of course, they can continue to subdivide. CCM can be divided into 7 subcategories here: ICT, ENT, wet waste, etc. And the MAN into 5, WAT into 2. The research in this article has only studied to this subcategory. Sorry. And there are more deeper detailed classifications. If you are interested, you can check it out in the OECD database. Then again, the yellow part is a part can be replaced here and replaced with the subcategories just mentioned. The third model is a mechanism model, which is also the 5 aspects I mentioned in the literature review. The model is based on Formula 1 2, with the intersection of did and m added to the right side of the equation, and m represents the proxy variables of the above 5 aspects. Now let's take a look at the results. In the main regression results, we can see that the coefficients of the did term behave differently in these 4 pattern families. The BRI has a significant role in promoting green patterns in family size 1 with a coefficient of 0.0825, as you can see in the first column. There is no significant impact on green patterns in family size 2 and 3. Green patterns in family size 4 have a significant negative effect with a coefficient of -0.1455. From the table, we can see that the BRI increases the green innovation on the low value green patterns of the countries along the route, but has no significant influence on the medium value green patterns and have a significant negative effect on the high value green patterns. Based on this result, we selected the family size 1 to further investigate the heterogeneity in technology domain. In the heterogeneous result, we find that BRI has a significant positive effect on the green patterns in CCM field, but has no significant effect on other fields. The results make sense because China owns leading technologies and experiences in climate change mitigation. Go further, we subdivide CCM to explore deeper technological domain heterogeneity. We can easily notice that BRI has a significant role in increasing the 3 fields of build, E&E, and wet waste. At the same time, these fields also happen to be the key development areas of China in promoting the Belt and Road cooperation projects. Next, I will show you the mechanism analysis. To help recall, I have shown the formula 3 at the top of each page in this section, where M is a proxy variable for each path. Technology gap can affect green innovation in host countries. We use RTA as proxy variables for the technology gap. RTA is an index of the specialization in environmental innovation of a given country relative to the world value. An index above 1 indicates a relative technology advantage or specialization in environmentally related technologies compared to the world value. We calculate the mean of the RTA of each country and define the average value higher than China as high RTA, and the 3 represents the 25%, 50%, 75% of each year's RTA respectively. Then we can see from the table that for countries with higher levels of green technology, BRI has a stronger effect on promoting green innovation, especially for the 75% level. The effect is significantly positive. On the path of absorption capacity, it's easy to understand that absorption capacity can help enterprises absorb, transform, and apply external knowledge related to environmental technology, and finally realize the development and the application of green technology innovation. We use R&D researchers, green patent and total patent level as proxy variables for the absorption capacity. We can easily draw a conclusion from table 6 that the stronger the absorption capacity of the country, the stronger the influence of the BRI on its green innovation. The impact of environmental regulation on green innovation can be traced back to the Porter hypothesis. The classic Porter hypothesis, which suggests that Pareto improvements can be achieved through well-designed environmental regulations that not only protect the environment, but also enhance competitiveness by accelerating innovation and offsetting compliance costs. We use carbon dioxide intensity and the level of carbon dioxide emissions as proxy variables for the environmental regulation. Then we find that countries with higher environmental regulations, BRI has a greater positive and significant impact on their green innovation. Also, the BRI can increase green innovation in host countries with large carbon dioxide emissions. R&D cooperation is more effective for green innovation than non-environmental innovation, and different cooperation modes have different impacts on developed and developing countries. So we want to see if the patent collaboration path could work, but unfortunately, the patent cooperation path we had envisioned didn't work. However, based on the regression of green patents in its segmented fields, we find that the cooperative patents in MAN field are significantly positive to the host country's green patents at a significance level of 10%. Finally, we test the energy structure path. Coal power means the percentage of electricity generated from coal. Of course, oil power from oil. Second, industry means the proportion of the added value of the secondary industry in GDP. The conclusion we got, the power generation structure of the host country has no significant impact on its green innovation, and the industrial structure has a significant impact on its green innovation. After that, we do some robustness tests. Using these three methods, and all of these results are consistent with the main regression. To make a summary here, this article uses panel data of 96 countries along the Belt and Road from 2003 to 2016 to empirically explore the impact of the BRI on the host country's green innovation and its internal impact mechanism. The main conclusions drawn from our research are as follows. First, we find that at the country level, BRI cooperation can induce green innovation in host countries along the Belt and Road, but only true in patents with low value. There is insignificant or even negative effect on host countries at higher level green innovation. Second, the positive technology spillover happens mainly in the climate change related technology fields. The technology direction in China's investment show a pattern to meet the host country's needs and features. For countries with higher level of green innovation, better ability of knowledge absorption, and stronger environmental regulation, the above effect would be stronger. Thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation. Welcome your questions and comments.
Thank you, Xinxin. Okay, if there are any questions from the floor, please, you can just write your question in the chat or you can raise your hand. So perhaps I can begin if the attendees are too shy to ask questions. I was very interested by your presentation, and at the end, you validate finally the win-win strategy of Porter. I would like to know, because there is a lot of academic literature about the limits of this hypothesis of win-win strategy. I would like to know if you test the limits of the hypothesis in your case or no?
Yeah. Sorry, my English skill is not so good, and I will say it more slowly. The limited of our research is we find that at the patent family size 4, we may express a negative effect on host countries' green innovations. So we may improve this point and to check it if it's true. And the voices of community, of the international community, is that the BRI may have some negative result, and we write this article is to check it if it's true. So our result to some extent may have some good points of the BRI we can say in the international community. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I finished.
Are there any questions from the floor?
Yeah, can I ask one question? This is Mahendra again.
Please.
In the terms of green patents, like how you define what's the green patent that's coming from? You said OECD databases. Like, is there any criteria for green patent? And I have one more question. Like you said, FDI effect in green environmental and host country. Like, so is there like any, let's say, comment or conclusion how FDI rules or FDI rules in countries affecting the environmental changes or whatever? So if you can just make a comment, something like that.
Okay. In the OECD database, you can download the patent numbers. It classified the green patent data, green patent already. So we download the file and the collaborated it. We use the patent data as the dependent variables. So the FDI's impact is included in the DID term because our the Belt and the Road Initiative mostly through the FDI mode to invest other countries to push our initiative. So also we control the FDI stock and the FDI flow. So our result may contain your questions. Is that right?
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Maybe I have one question.
Yes, please.
So if I understand well, you use difference in order to see if the treatment group have more innovation in green patents, but how do you control for, because you compare green patents in various countries, so how do you control for differences like maybe the year of the treatment? Some countries had a policy in order to help the development of green innovation. I don't know if I'm clear, but like country effects, but with time,
Yeah.
so that could not be included in country fixed effects or time fixed effects.
Yeah, you can see from this page, the mu I and gum T is a year fixed effect and the country fixed effect. So we control the country and the year its own features.
But what I mean is, what if a country puts in place a policy? So it will change with time, you know, and with countries both. I don't know if you see what I mean, because I expect that there are different trajectories for different countries of the policy. I don't know if it's clear.
I got it. This is a thank you for your question, and I haven't thought it before. I will check it after the meeting. Sorry, I can't answer your questions at the time being.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? No. So I'm going to thank Xinxin for presentation and answering questions. And at last, we speak about the formation and growth of zombie companies in renewable energy sectors. And we are going to see the willingness of companies to innovate in energy technology. And that is the key to energy transition and low carbon. So I'm going to invite Jiahui Yi to present her presentation. And Jiahui, I let you the floor.
Oh, thanks for introduction. Can you see my screen?
It's okay.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Jiahui Yi, from a PhD student from China University of Geoscience, Wuhan. My honor to have the opportunity to speak at this meeting. So I would like to present my paper that renewable energy policy carried out innovation evidence from device firms in China. In the first part of the report, I'm going to begin with the negative impact of fossil energy and device firms and how device firms influence renewable energy policy and innovation mechanism. My presentation will cover the following aspects. The first one is introduction, policy background, and research hypothesis, methodology, and data. The first part is the result. First, the research background. The greenhouse gas and resource shortage caused by the excessive use of traditional fossil energy has severely affected people's living environment, economic development, and social welfare. Therefore, the development of the renewable energy has been included in the critical development plan of various countries at the end of 2018. 179 countries have set national or regional renewable development goals covering more than 70% of the world countries and regions. Now there are pictures of the global energy-related carbon emission from 1919 to 2021, and the change in carbon emission by field. Except for 2020, energy-related carbon dioxide emission have fallen, and the growth rate of the carbon dioxide have increased in all other years. In most years, the growth rate of oil, natural gas, and coal is still rising. The effectiveness of the renewable energy policy is closely related to the natural, social, and policy environment, and the consistency and credibility of the policy affect the expected return, thus triggering the volatility of renewable investment and innovation indicators. However, the relationship between renewable energy policy and innovation performance has not formed a unified conclusion. So this paper is to explore the relationship between renewable energy policies, innovation, and the Dubai firms, and how Dubai firms influence this mechanism. Since 2013, China surpassed the US as the world's largest renewable energy producer and the largest consumer of renewable energy. And consumption growth in China accounts for 45% of the world as an important participant in renewable energy. The effectiveness of China's renewable energy policy is of great significance to global renewable energy policy design. Due to the lack of effective planning, now entrant barriers, and the low production technology levels, renewable energy industry enter the stage of overcapacity prematurely during the growth stage. The low efficiency Dubai company is an important cause of the overcapacity to limiting the optimization of the developed structure and the quantity of renewable energy industry. The Dubai firm refers to low efficiency company that long-term profits are difficult to replace. They rely on the support of banks and government to survive. The existence of the Dubai companies not only reduces the resource utilization efficiency of the entire society, but also causes other profitable companies to exist through the negative spillover effects. Hence, thus, it is an important task to promote the exit of the Dubai firms for adjusting the economic structure and improving the quality of economic development. Due to the great harm of Dubai firms to economic development and environmental production, this article eventually employs Dubai company as the mediators based on the data of listed Chinese and renewable energy companies, and the mediation effect model is adopted to study whether different renewable policy trigger Dubai firms and how these effects are transmitted to the innovation of other companies in the industry. The purpose of this article is to explore the reason why China's renewable energy industry is large but not known and entered into our capacity prematurely. The second part is the policy background and the research hypothesis. China began R&D of wide energy solar energy applications in 1980s, but it's not yet formed industrial scale effects. The government promulgated the renewable energy law in 2005, and we divided the renewable policy into mandatory policy and vessel insensitive policy. And mandatory policy are divided into the developed plan and compulsory purchase, also called as the RPS, renewable platform and standard. We divided the vessel incentive policy into allowed, allowance, and exception, feed-in tariff, and direct subsidies, and green credit policy. There are three in the research hypothesis. One is different renewable policies are heterogeneous to the formation of Dubai forms. Compulsory regulation reduces the possibility of the Dubai companies by following cost effects. The financial incentive regulation increases the possibility of becoming a Dubai firm due to the information asymmetry, moral hazard, and government goals. The second research hypothesis is the renewable energy policy not only directly affects the technological innovation, but also affects innovation through the intermediary of Dubai companies. The third part is the methodology and data. The first is the identification of the Dubai firms. This paper uses as CHK of Shen in 2017 to solve the problem of insufficient and over-identified of to first calculate the minimum interest. The second, estimate corporate interest income. And the third is the compare the actual net interest expense with the calculate minimum net interest expense and use the company previous adopt to normalize the difference to obtain the interest difference. The fourth step is to use the information of corporate profits to make further corrections. In China, if the company is unable to repay to principal and interest, the bank often carry forward expected payments and interest to bank loan for the next year. Therefore, when the banks provide implicit subsidies to insolvent companies, the primary consideration is to provide debt and interest extensions rather than new loans. Therefore, the company's liabilities exceeded 15% of the total assets, and the future liabilities are greater than the future liabilities. The company is deemed to be a due by firms in the period. This is the method and variables. The mandatory policy adopts the target of renewable energy consumption and production in the developed land and compulsory purchase based on the availability of the data. The fiscal incentive policy, many studies, subsidy policy, which is measured by government subsidies, and green credit policies, referring to Jiahui, which is calculated by the proportion of total assets to short and long-term credits. Total factor productivity is calculated by the LP method, and the OP method is used for robustness check. The cultural variables are mainly divided into firm level and regional level. The firm level is the asset liability, return on assets, industrial output value, income test, number of employees. The regional area is GDP per capita and marketization index. Based on the unbalanced panel data of less renewable complaint from 1990 to 2018, this article exploring the exploration between renewable energy policies due by firms and innovation. According to the white and defined, we choose the main business, including hydropower and so on, and remove ST companies and other company with serious lack of data. Finally, we take 166 renewable energy firms as samples. The data on regulatory renewable policy are derived from the government documents published on the web of the Development and Reform Commission and the government. The regional variables such as the GDP and fixed effects. And fixed effect comes from China City Statistical Yearbook and China Regional Economic Statistical Yearbook. In order to avoid the influence of the nominal value of the financial data on the result, this paper used 1990 as the base period and used the provision consuming price index and investment predicts to adjust the nominal values of enterprise and regions. The last part is the result. First is the heterogeneous renewable energy policy on the possibility of becoming a due-by firm. We can see from this chart a renewable energy consumption and production targets and subsidy policy and long and short-term green credit policies all have significant positive effects on the innovation of renewable energy companies. Among them, the promotion effect of long-term loan is the most significant. And the positive of the significant outweigh the negative effect and motivated innovation. The high debt to asset ratio of the enterprise is not conducive to enterprise innovation. The economic level of the region where the company and the industrial value is located have a positive impact on company innovation. This is the mediation, in fact, is also what this article is aimed to explore. From the result of the mediation effect, it can be seen that the subsidy policy has caused Dubai firms to have a credit out. To have a credit out effect on innovation, and the coefficient of the policy effect has a positive change to negative change, indicating that the Dubai companies caused by the subsidies have caused serious resource allocation and distortions, making normal companies withdraw from the industrial, reducing the average efficiency and technical level of the industrial. The coefficients of other policies are affected by the Dubai companies, and their role in driving innovation is also declining. Sensitivity tests showed that the mediator satisfied the assumption of the redolence. And this is the robustness check. We changed the identification method of Dubai firms to conduct a robustness check and find that the results do not change. We also changed the method of measuring the TFP, total factor productivity, by using OPSI method, and find the result did not change also. Further, we discussed the policy effect of the heterogeneous firms. The subsidy policy have the most obvious crowding out effect on state-owned enterprise, but the effect on state-owned enterprise is not significant, since the bank are more willing to lend to state-owned enterprise, and the green credit policy of state-owned enterprise has a much higher impact on enterprise innovation than no state-owned enterprise. And the company with a high degree of internal dependence are more sensitive to changes in the external demand and long-term borrowing. The growth in the proportion of renewable energy consumption and sustained long-term borrowing will have more positive impact on corporate innovation. That's all. Thanks for your time, and look forward to your advice and question.
Thank you, Jiao. You're perfect on time. So, if there is some question from the floor. Perhaps I can begin like every time. It was very interesting, and one of the conclusions is that the crowding out effects depend on geographical factor. I would like to know why. How do you explain that the crowding out effects depends on geographical factors? Perhaps it depends on the application of conditions of regulation, or there is another factor?
I'm sorry, but I can't hear very clearly.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if my...
Sorry.
My...
In the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that the crowding out effects depend on geographical factor. I think it was the South region that was more impacted by the crowding out effects, and I would like to know why.
I have changed this part. In my current paper, I didn't talk about this part because in the reviewer suggests asking the same question, so I consider it again. So I try to consider the heterogeneous.
Okay.
Heterogeneous effect between companies.
Okay, and you mentioned too that you have some heterogeneity between firms. I would like to know what are the characteristic of this heterogeneity. Is it the size of the firms? Is it the sector, the industry, the type of sector? Is it the technological maturity? You mentioned that the firms were heterogeneous.
Correct.
The heterogeneity.
Yeah.
And I would like to know what is exactly the characteristic of this heterogeneity.
We classify the firms as state-owned and non-state-owned. The second classification is the external independence, external reliance on bank or government.
Okay.
To explore this.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
I just have one question.
Please, go on.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I mean, we are doing something similar in some project. So did some kind of analysis like how these zombies or big companies also supporting the entire innovation? Like what's the role of these companies developing or supporting innovation in renewable technologies or renewable energy?
I choose the total factor productivity, which is calculated by the production function to show the innovation of the companies. And I try to further explore the green patent by classify their IPCC code.
Okay, thank you. I'm reading just your abstract, so now it's a little bit clear for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I forgot to open my micro. Thank you. Are there any questions from the floor? No. So if there are no more questions, I would like to thank our speakers for their brilliant presentation. It was very interesting. Thank you for all. And I would let you leave this virtual session, perhaps to go to other sessions. I wish you an excellent continuation of the conference, and thank you. And thank you for the organizers of this very interesting conference.
Just before you leave, first, thank you all for your very nice presentation. Could you please upload your presentations on your dashboard, please, for the speakers? And that's it. Have a very nice conference.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Everybody.
Bye. Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.